The great hall of Nexus Prime stretched beyond what most eyes could see. Representatives from 847 different worlds sat in their assigned seats, each species bringing their own way of breathing, seeing, and thinking. The air shimmered with translation fields that turned every word into something every being could understand. Hyun-woo sat in the back corner, taking notes on his small device. As Earth's junior representative, he was here to watch and learn. Most days, nothing important happened. The big powers argued about trade routes, while smaller worlds stayed quiet. Today felt different. Elder Kethvar moved slowly to the center, platform. The ancient Thessian looked like he was made of living stone with skin that held the memory of 50,000 years. When he spoke, even the loudest representatives stopped their chatter. "I come before you with words that have waited in our archives for millennia," Kethvar said. His voice carried the weight of ages. "There are warnings carved in quantum crystal and etched in stone, warnings about a species that will change everything." The Vorthon ambassador laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "More ancient stories, Elder. We have real problems to solve. The shipping lanes need protection, and the outer rim colonies are... The species comes from a blue world in the outer territories," Kethvar continued, ignoring the interruption. "Our records speak of beings who can bend reality through will alone. They multiply like stars being born. They take what they touch and make it stronger." Hyun-woo looked up from his notes. A blue world. His own planet was mostly blue when seen from space, but that was impossible. Humans had only just figured out how to travel between planets in their own system. "The texts say they will arrive when the galaxy thinks itself safe," the Elder continued. "They will come not as conquerors, but as something far more dangerous. They will come as friends." This time, multiple representatives laughed. The Zelix Trademaster's tentacles rippled with amusement. "Friends are dangerous now? Elder, perhaps your great age has made you see threats in shadows." But Kethvar was not finished. From his robes he pulled out a crystal that glowed with inner light. The chamber fell silent as images appeared in the air above them. Strange symbols and pictures that seemed to move on their own. "See the warnings, left by those who came before us," he said. "The humans have a gift. They take the impossible and make it real. They find solutions where others see only problems. They unite what was divided." The word humans hit Hyun-woo like a physical blow. He stared at the floating images, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. There were pictures of creatures that looked remarkably like his own species, though the art was strange and ancient. "They will offer partnership instead of dominion," Kethvar continued. "They will share their knowledge freely, and in doing so, they will reshape the very foundation of galactic civilization. The old powers will find themselves irrelevant not through force, but through obsolescence." The sanctuary of pure thought's representative, a being of living energy, pulsed with irritation. Even if such a species existed, how could primitives threaten advanced civilizations? "We have weapons that can crack planets and shields that can stop stars." "Because they do not seek to destroy," Kethvar replied. "They seek to build, and what they build grows beyond all control." Hyun-woo's hand trembled as he wrote. Every description matched his people perfectly. Humans did have a tendency to tinker with things until they worked better. They did try to solve problems that others ignored. They did believe in working together rather than fighting. But how could ancient aliens know about humans before humans even knew about aliens? "The records speak of their last visit to our galaxy," Kethvar said, his voice growing softer but somehow more intense. "It was millions of years ago. They were young then and made mistakes. They left behind only ruins and regret. But they also left behind a promise. They would return. And when they did, they would be wiser." The hall erupted in discussions. Some representatives mocked the old Thessian. Others argued about ancient history. A few seemed genuinely worried. Through it all, Kethvar stood silent, his ancient eyes scanning the crowd. For just a moment, those eyes met Hyun-woo's. The young human felt like the Elder could see right through him, right into his soul. "The humans have already begun to move," Kethvar announced, raising his voice above the noise. Their ships probe the edges of known space. Their signals reach across the void. In 5 cycles they will be among you. In 10 cycles they will have changed everything. Enough! The Vorthan ambassador stood, his massive form casting shadows across the platform. We waste time on fairy tales while real threats demand our attention. The pirates in the Outer Rim grow bolder. The trade disputes between, you may ignore the warnings, Kethvar interrupted. But the truth remains. The humans come. And when they arrive, remember that an old fool tried to prepare you. With that, the elder gathered his crystal and walked slowly from the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Hyunwoo sat frozen in his seat, his mind racing. Everything he had heard seemed impossible, yet everything fit too perfectly to be coincidence. If the elder was right, if humans really were this prophesied species, then first contact would be very different from what anyone expected. Over the next hour, the assembly returned to normal business. Trade routes and territorial disputes filled the discussion. But Hyunwoo noticed something new. Several representatives kept glancing toward the section where Earth's delegation sat. Whispered conversations started and stopped when they noticed him watching. As the session ended, Hyunwoo made his way toward the exit. His mind was full of questions he didn't know how to ask. How could he report this to Earth? How could he explain that an ancient alien had just described humanity with perfect accuracy? Near the great doors, he found Kethvar waiting for him. You have questions, young human, the elder said without turning around. How did you know? Hyunwoo asked. Your species has a unique energy signature. We learned to recognize it long ago. Kethvar faced him now, those ancient eyes full of sadness and hope. Tell your people that some of us remember. Tell them that some of us welcome their return. But why didn't you tell them who I was? Why didn't you point me out? Because they are not ready to hear it from me, Kethvar replied. They must discover the truth for themselves. When they do, perhaps they will finally listen. The elder began to walk away, then paused. Your people will be tested in the years to come. Remember that your greatest strength is not your technology or your weapons. It is your refusal to leave others behind. Hyunwoo watched the ancient being disappear into the crowd. Around him, representatives from hundreds of worlds went about their business, unaware that everything they knew was about to change. In his pocket, his communication device buzzed with a message from Earth. Captain So-min's exploration fleet had just detected artificial signals from beyond the Outer Rim. First contact protocols were being activated. The prophecy, it seemed, was about to begin. Captain So-min stood on the bridge of the Wanderer's Dream, watching alien stars grow larger on the main screen. 3 years had passed since the first signals were detected, and now 12 human ships moved through space that no human had ever seen before. Contact on long-range sensors, reported Tae-hyun from his engineering station. It's big, Captain. Looks like a space station. So-min nodded calmly, but her heart was racing. This was it. First contact with an alien civilization. Everything humanity had dreamed about was about to become real. Open a channel on all frequencies, she ordered. Let's introduce ourselves properly. On Earth, Director Nam-soo watched the live feed from his hidden facility deep underground. For decades, his department had been reverse engineering technology from crashed alien ships. The public knew nothing about it. Even most government officials didn't know the truth. The aliens had been visiting Earth for centuries, leaving behind pieces of their technology. Human scientists had studied every fragment, slowly learning how to build gravity drives, energy shields, and faster-than-light communication. When Captain So-min's ships left Earth, they carried technology that was decades ahead of what the public knew existed. Sir, his assistant reported, the alien station is responding to our ships. They seem surprised. Nam-soo smiled grimly. Of course they were surprised. According to their records, humans weren't supposed to have advanced space travel for another 100 years. Back in space, So-min received her first alien transmission. The voice that came through her speakers was mechanical, clearly processed through a translation system. Unknown vessels, you are entering controlled space. Identify yourselves and state your intentions. This is Captain Somin of the human vessel Wanderer's Dream. We come in peace, seeking trade and friendship with all civilizations. There was a long pause. Somin could imagine the confusion on the alien station as they processed this information. Human, please verify. Our records indicate your species has not achieved spaceflight capability. Somin exchanged glances with Tae-hyun. Clearly the aliens had been watching Earth for some time. We've had some recent breakthroughs, she replied diplomatically. We would welcome the opportunity to share knowledge and establish peaceful relations. Within days, news of human arrival spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. The Yidai reaction was mixed. Some species were curious about these newcomers. Others were worried about the implications of a new spacefaring race. But what surprised everyone was how quickly humans adapted to galactic civilization. Commander Ju Young led the military escort ships, but found himself dealing more with merchants than soldiers. Human traders seemed to have an instinct for finding profitable routes that others had missed. They looked at problems from angles that alien minds had never considered. Tae-hyun became something of a celebrity among alien engineers. His solutions to technical problems seemed to come from nowhere, combining alien technology in ways that shouldn't work but somehow did. It's like they see connections we miss, reported a Zelix engineer to his superiors. They took our gravity stabilizers and combined them with Vorthan energy cores in a way that creates twice the efficiency. We never thought to try such a combination. The reports flowing into the major powers were disturbing for their very normalcy. Humans weren't conquering anyone. They weren't making demands or establishing colonies by force. Instead, they were simply fitting in. And everywhere they went, things got better. Trade routes that had been unprofitable for centuries suddenly became profitable when humans suggested new approaches. Diplomatic disputes that had lasted for decades were resolved when human mediators offered fresh perspectives. Technical problems that had stumped alien scientists for years were solved when humans applied their unique way of thinking. Hyun-woo, now promoted to full ambassador status, found himself busier than ever. Species that had never been taken seriously by the major powers were suddenly requesting meetings with human representatives. The smaller civilizations saw opportunity in humanity's different approach to galactic politics. They actually listened to us, explained Haewon, a human diplomat who had become unofficial spokesperson for what the media was calling the Minor Species Coalition. When we tell them our problems, they don't dismiss us. They try to help. The Yao Thessian elder Kethvar watched these developments with growing concern. Not because humans were dangerous, but because the major powers still didn't understand what they were dealing with. He requested a private meeting with the Galactic Council's inner circle, the small group of representatives from the most powerful civilizations. The humans are more advanced than they appear, he warned them. Their technology is not primitive, it is simply different. They have been preparing for this contact longer than you realize. The Vorthon representative dismissed his concerns. We've analyzed their ships. Their weapons are adequate but not threatening. Their shields are strong but not impenetrable. They pose no military threat to established powers. You misunderstand the nature of the threat, Kethvar replied patiently. They do not seek to dominate through force. They seek to transform through example. The Sanctuary of Pure Thought's representative pulsed with confusion. Transform what? Everything, the elder said simply. Look at what has happened in just 3 years. Minor species that were ignored for millennia now have a voice. Trade routes that enriched only the powerful now benefit everyone. Scientific cooperation has advanced more in 3 years than in the previous 3 decades. But the inner circle was not listening. They saw opportunity where Kethvar saw transformation. If humans were good at solving problems and making trade more efficient, then they could be useful partners, controlled partners. Meanwhile, in space, Captain Somin was making a discovery that would change everything. Captain, Tae-hyun called excitedly from his station, you need to see this. We found something. The ruins floated in the darkness between stars, ancient and mysterious. They were clearly artificial, but unlike anything in any galactic database. The metal was unknown. The energy signatures were impossible. How old are these? So-Min asked. Computer estimates at least 2 million years, Tae-hyun replied. But Captain, there's something else. The quantum resonance patterns. They match Earth technology. So-Min felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? I mean, whoever built this used the same basic principles that we use. The same approach to gravity manipulation. The same energy conversion methods. It's like... He paused, struggling with the implications. It's like humans built this. Unknown to the human fleet, their discovery was being monitored by sensors, placed throughout the galaxy. In the depths of space, automatic systems activated for the first time in millions of years. Ancient protocols began to run their course. Deep in the archives of Thessian Prime, Kethavar felt the subtle vibration of quantum crystals that had been silent for eons. The old warnings were becoming reality faster than even he had expected. On Earth, Director Nam-Su received reports that made him lock down his entire facility. Alien ruins containing human technology could only mean one thing. Humans had been in space before, long before, and something had brought them home. In the Galactic Council chambers, emergency sessions were called as news of the discovery spread. The implications were staggering. If humans had built those ruins, if they had been spacefaring 2 million years ago, then everything they thought they knew about galactic history was wrong. But what worried the major powers most was a simple question. If humans had been that advanced before, what had happened to them? And more importantly, what would prevent it from happening again? As debates raged and theories flew, human ships continued their quiet work throughout the galaxy, making friends, solving problems, building bridges between species that had never cooperated before. The quiet revolution was gaining momentum and no one seemed able to stop it. 5 years had passed since first contact, and the galaxy was not the same place it had been. Ambassador Hae-won stood before an assembly of 300 representatives from species that had never been invited to speak in the main council chambers. They called themselves the Minor Species Coalition, though their influence was growing beyond what the name suggested. We are not seeking to overthrow anyone, Hae-won said calmly. We simply want fair representation in decisions that affect our worlds. In the audience, beings from dozens of different civilizations nodded in agreement. The Kithrani, whose crystal songs had been dismissed as primitive music, had proven to be master engineers when humans showed them how to apply their harmonic principles to technology. The Velox, whose rapid breeding had been seen as a burden, had become the galaxy's most efficient workforce when humans developed systems that utilized their natural speed and numbers. Everywhere humans went, they found value in what others had overlooked. General Wu Jin reviewed the latest intelligence reports from his command center on Earth. The picture they painted was remarkable. Human presence had spread to over 200 star systems, but not through conquest or colonization. Instead, humans had been invited, welcomed, and in many cases, begged to stay. Sir, his aide reported, the Vorthon Empire has issued another formal complaint. They claim we're interfering with their client species. Wu Jin studied the star charts on his wall. The Vorthon Empire controlled nearly a quarter of known space through a combination of military might and economic pressure. Their client species provided resources and labor in exchange for protection and technology. But human traders were offering something the Vorthons couldn't provide: partnership instead of protection, knowledge instead of dependence. What's our response? The aide asked. We maintain our current policy, Wu Jin replied. We deal with any species that wants to deal with us. We don't ask permission from their supposed masters. Dr. Yunji was experiencing her own revolution in the research stations orbiting Kepler 442b. Her team was working with scientists from 40 different species, combining knowledge in ways that were producing breakthrough after breakthrough. The Morthani crystal growth techniques combined with Tellurian gravity manipulation and our own quantum processing. We're looking at computational power that exceeds anything in galactic civilization by several orders of magnitude, she reported. To Earth. But it wasn't just the technology that was revolutionary. It was the process. Human scientists didn't hoard their discoveries. They shared freely, encouraging others to build upon their work. The result was an acceleration of scientific progress that was making the established research institutions obsolete. Taehyun had become something of a legend among the engineering communities. His latest innovation was a new form of faster-than-light travel that didn't require the massive energy expenditures of traditional jump drives. "I don't understand how it works," admitted a senior Zelix engineer. "The mathematics are sound, but the principles, they're not following any known laws of physics. That's because we're not breaking the laws," Taehyun explained patiently. "We're finding ways around them. Instead of forcing our way through space-time, we're asking space-time to help us." The distinction seemed meaningless to many alien minds, but the results were undeniable. Human ships could now travel faster and farther than anything else in the galaxy, using a fraction of the energy. Elder Kethvar requested one final meeting with the Galactic Council's inner circle. He brought with him quantum crystals that contained projections and calculations spanning millions of years. "Look at the patterns," he urged them. "Human population growth, technological advancement rates, alliance formations. They are not conquering the galaxy. They are absorbing it." The holographic displays showed a web of connections spreading outward from human-contacted systems. Trade routes, communication networks, research partnerships, and diplomatic agreements formed an increasingly complex pattern. "Everything they touch becomes stronger," Kethvar continued. "But more importantly, everything they touch becomes connected to everything else. They are creating a galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than competition." The Vorthan representative studied the displays with growing unease. "What are you suggesting we do about it?" "Nothing," Kethvar replied. "Because there is nothing you can do. This is not a military threat that can be defeated. This is not a political movement that can be suppressed. This is evolution in action." But the inner circle was not ready to accept evolution. They saw threat where Kethvar saw progress. They saw loss of control where he saw expansion of possibility. "We need to implement containment protocols," announced the Zelix trade master. "Humanity must be classified as a controlled development species." The vote was swift and decisive. Order 847 was activated for the first time in galactic history. Humanity would be systematically isolated from galactic civilization until they could be properly managed. Captain So-Min received the containment order while exploring a previously unknown sector of space. Her fleet now included ships from dozens of species, all working together to push the boundaries of known space. "They want us to stop expanding," she told her mixed crew. "They want us to return to our home systems and accept limited contact with approved civilizations." The response from her alien crew members was immediate and angry. The Kithrani sang harmonies of protest. The Velox chittered their disagreement. Even the normally peaceful Deltans expressed outrage at the idea. "Captain," said her Morthani science officer, "we have learned more in 5 years working with humans than in 50 years working alone. We will not return to isolation." Similar scenes played out across human space. The Minor Species Coalition declared the containment order illegal under galactic law. Worlds that had never dared to challenge the major powers suddenly found themselves standing together against injustice. President Da-Eun addressed the crisis from the United Earth Government's headquarters. Her message was broadcast across the galaxy through communication networks that humans and their allies had built together. "We did not come to your galaxy to conquer or control," she said. "We came to join the community of civilized beings. If that community will not have us as equals, then we will build our own community, one based on mutual respect and shared progress." The response was swift. Over 400 civilizations declared their support for humanity. Trade agreements were signed, defense pacts were established. Research partnerships were formalized. Within months, what had started as human expansion had become something entirely new. A parallel galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than dominance. The Vorthan Empire responded predictably. A battle fleet was dispatched to restore order to rebellious client species. Their target was a human research station in the Kepler system. Admiral Young Ho commanded the defense fleet that met them. 300 ships from 20 different species faced off against the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The battle that followed would be talked about for centuries, not because of its violence, but because of its absence. As Vorthon, weapons powered up to fire, they simply stopped. Gravity fields held the enemy ships in place without harming them. Communication systems that should have been jammed instead broadcast messages of peace in every known language. "You came here to destroy." Admiral Young-Ho's voice echoed through every ship in the Vorthon fleet. "But we did not come here to be destroyed. We came here to build. And what we build, we protect." The Vorthon admiral found his weapons systems completely unresponsive. His ship's engines were held motionless by gravity fields that his sensors couldn't even detect. His crew was unharmed but completely helpless. For the first time in their military history, the Vorthons had encountered a force they could not overcome through strength. "This is impossible," the Vorthon admiral transmitted. "Our weapons are the most advanced in the galaxy." "Your weapons are designed to destroy," Young-Ho replied. "Ours are designed to preserve. Which do you think the universe prefers?" Elder Kethavar watched the broadcast from his home on Thessian Prime. Around him, the ancient quantum crystals hummed with harmonics that had been silent for millions of years. The old warnings had become reality. But as he watched human ships, helping Vorthon crews repair their damaged systems, as he saw former enemies working together to understand the new technology, he realized something his ancestors had not foreseen. The humans had indeed returned. But they had learned from their ancient mistakes. This time, they were not just building an empire, they were building a family. 8 years had passed since first contact, and the galaxy was splitting apart. The major powers had implemented Order 847 with ruthless efficiency. Human colonies were surrounded by blockade fleets. Trade routes to human space were cut off. Any ship carrying human passengers was turned away from core worlds. Intelligence Director Sung-min studied the reports flowing into Earth's command center. The blockade was complete, at least on paper. In reality, things were much more complicated. "Sir, the Zelix Consortium is reporting massive resource shortages," his aide reported. 17 different minerals that they got from coalition worlds. "The shortages are affecting their manufacturing capacity." Sung-min nodded grimly. The galaxy's major powers had made a critical mistake. They assumed that isolation would weaken humanity and their allies. Instead, it was weakening everyone else. Admiral Young-Ho commanded a fleet that had grown to over 500 vessels. Ships from dozens of species flew together, their crews working as one unit. The blockade meant nothing to them because they had built their own infrastructure. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a message from the Vorthon blockade line. They're requesting permission to visit our medical facilities." Young-Ho raised an eyebrow. "Medical facilities?" "Yes, sir. Apparently there's been an outbreak of crimson fever on their ships. Our doctors are the only ones in the sector who know how to treat it." It was happening everywhere. The isolation that was supposed to weaken the coalition was instead highlighting how much the galaxy had come to depend on human innovations. Medical treatments, engineering solutions, agricultural techniques, and communication protocols developed by human allied scientists were suddenly unavailable to the rest of the galaxy. President Daeun addressed the Coalition Assembly from the new capital station they had built in neutral space. Representatives from over 400 worlds listened as she outlined their response to the blockade. "We will not fight this war with weapons," she declared. "We will fight it with results. Every day we are isolated is another day we prove that cooperation works better than competition." The proof was everywhere. Coalition worlds that had been struggling under the old system were now thriving. Trade flowed freely between allied species. Scientific research progressed at unprecedented rates. Even crime had dropped dramatically as the social programs developed by human sociologists spread throughout coalition space. But the most telling change was happening among the younger generations of the major powers. Students from Vorthon academies were secretly accessing coalition research databases. Young Zelix entrepreneurs were trying to copy coalition business practices. Even children from the religious worlds of the sanctuary were asking their parents why they couldn't be friends with humans. Elder Kethvar received an unexpected visitor at his home on Thessian Prime. A young Vorthon officer named Captain Zethkar had traveled in secret to meet with the ancient being. "I need to understand," the captain said. "My people speak of humans as a threat to galactic stability, but I have studied their actions. They have not conquered anyone. They have not enslaved anyone. They build hospitals and schools wherever they go. How is this threatening?" Kethvar gestured for the young warrior to sit. "Your people see the universe as a place of limited resources, where one species' gain must be another's loss. Humans see the universe as a place of unlimited potential, where everyone's gain is everyone's benefit." "But that's impossible," Zethkar protested. "Resources are finite. Power is limited. Someone must rule, and others must serve." "Is that what you see when you look at Coalition space?" Kethvar asked gently. The captain was quiet for a long moment. "No," he finally admitted. "I see worlds that were dying become prosperous. I see species that were enemies working together. I see problems being solved instead of endured." "Then you understand why your leaders are afraid," the elder replied. "They are not afraid of human weapons or human armies. They are afraid of human ideas." The breaking point came when the Vorthon Empire attempted to force one of their client species back into submission. The Nethrani had declared independence and joined the coalition 3 months earlier. The Vorthons demanded their return and sent a fleet to enforce their will. What they found waiting for them was not what they expected. The Nethrani homeworld was protected by a defense grid, unlike anything in galactic records. Instead of weapons designed to destroy attacking ships, the grid used technology that simply made aggression impossible. Vorthon weapons powered down automatically when they tried to target civilian areas. Ship computers refused to follow orders. That would harm non-combatants. Even the soldiers' personal weapons stopped working when pointed at unarmed beings. "This is a violation of all military principles," the Vorthon fleet commander raged.
"Weapons must obey their users." "Why?" asked the calm voice of a human technician over the communication channel. "Who benefits when weapons are used to harm innocent people?" The Vorthon commander had no answer to that question. But the real shock
came when the Nethrani offered to help repair damage to the Vorthon ships that had been caused by the hasty withdrawal from the system. Engineers who had been enemies an hour earlier found themselves working side by side to fix problems that affected them both. Captain Somin watched the reports from her flagship as her exploration fleet pushed deeper into unknown space. Her crews now included beings from over 100 different species, all working together to expand the boundaries of known civilization. "Captain," her science officer reported, "we're detecting artificial structures in the next system. They appear to be very old." The discovery that followed would change everything once again. The structures were vast, clearly artificial, and obviously ancient. But more importantly, they were active. Systems that had been dormant for millions of years were powering up in response to the approach of the human fleet. "It's responding to us specifically," Taehyun reported in amazement. "The quantum signatures, they're matching our biopatterns. It's like these machines were built to recognize humans." As they watched, massive gates began to open in space itself. Pathways to other galaxies became visible for the first time in millions of years. And from those gates came signals in a language that human computers could somehow understand. "Welcome home," the ancient message said. "We have been waiting for you to return." On Earth, Director Namsu felt his hands shake as he read the reports. The implications were staggering. Not only had humans been spacefaring before, they had been intergalactic. These machines had been left behind as beacons, waiting for humanity to rediscover space travel and find their way back. But there was more. The ancient systems contained databases of knowledge that dwarfed anything in current galactic civilization. Medical techniques that could cure diseases thought incurable. Engineering principles that could revolutionize space travel. Agricultural methods that could turn desert worlds into gardens. And all of it was freely available to anyone who approached with peaceful intentions. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. Ancient human artifacts were powering up everywhere, offering knowledge and assistance to any species that wanted it. But they would only work in partnership with humans themselves. Suddenly, the isolation of humanity took on a very different meaning. The major powers had cut themselves off not just from human innovation, but from the greatest treasure trove of knowledge in galactic history. Ambassador Hyun Woo stood before an emergency session of the Galactic Council. For the first time since the blockade began, representatives from the major powers were requesting dialogue. "We are willing to discuss terms," he said simply. "But understand this. We are no longer asking for acceptance into your civilization. We are offering you a chance to join ours." In the Great Assembly Hall, beings from across the galaxy sat in stunned silence. The balance of power had shifted so completely that many of them were still trying to understand what had happened. Elder Kethavar watched from the observer section, the ancient quantum crystals around his neck humming with harmonics that spoke of change and growth. The old warnings had spoken of humans returning. They had not mentioned that when they returned, they would bring the keys to unlock the universe itself. The question now was whether the old powers would be wise enough to accept the new reality, or whether pride would blind them to the greatest opportunity in galactic history. As debates began in the council chambers, human ships continued their work throughout the galaxy, building, connecting, healing, growing. The quiet revolution had become something much larger. It had become an evolution that would either lift the entire galaxy to new heights or leave the old powers behind as history moved forward without them. 10 years had passed since first contact, and the galaxy was unrecognizable. The great amphitheater of the United Galactic Assembly stretched beyond the horizon, filled with representatives from over 1,200 civilizations. Species that had never been allowed to speak now had voices. Worlds that had been ignored now had power. Speaker Hyun Woo stood at the center podium, no longer the nervous young diplomat who had once taken notes in the back corner of the old Galactic Council. His voice carried across the vast space without amplification, the acoustic engineering of the chamber designed by a dozen different species working together. "Today we celebrate not the victory of one species over another," he said, "but the triumph of cooperation over competition, of building over destroying, of hope over fear." In the audience, beings from across the galaxy listened with attention that would have been impossible in the old council chambers. The Vorthans sat beside the Nithrani they had once tried to enslave. Zelix traders worked with human economists to plan trade routes that benefited everyone. Even the mysterious sanctuary of pure thought had sent representatives to participate in the new galactic democracy. Captain So Min commanded an exploration fleet that numbered in the thousands, pushing into regions of space that had been unreachable just a decade earlier. Her crews were so mixed that it was often impossible to tell which species had originally built which ships. Vorthan warriors worked alongside Kithrani engineers. Zelix navigators plotted courses with human mathematicians. "Captain," her science officer reported, "we're detecting another gate network in this system. This one leads to the Andromeda Galaxy." Somin smiled. Each new discovery opened more possibilities, revealed more connections between the ancient human civilization and the rest of the universe. The gates didn't just lead to other places. They led to other times, other dimensions, other possibilities. "Prepare a probe," she ordered. "Let's see what our ancestors left for us over there." The transformation had not been accomplished through war or conquest. It had happened through something much more powerful, the simple refusal to accept that things had to stay the same. Admiral Young Ho's fleets patrolled space that was truly peaceful for the first time in galactic history. The technology that made weapons refuse to harm innocents had spread throughout coalition space. War between advanced civilizations had become practically impossible. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving a distress call from a Vorthon merchant vessel. They're under attack by pirates." "Response time?" Young Ho asked. 18 minutes at best speed." "Too long. Are there any coalition ships in the area?" "Yes, sir. 3 Nithrani patrol boats and a Kithrani science vessel." "Coordinate the response. All coalition vessels are authorized to provide assistance." It was routine now. The idea that former enemies would risk their lives to protect each other had become so normal that no one even commented on it anymore. Tae Hyun worked in research facilities that spanned multiple star systems. connected by quantum communication, networks that allowed real-time collaboration across impossible distances. His latest project involved something that would have been considered magic just a few years earlier: the ability to heal dying stars. The energy patterns are stabilizing, he reported to colleagues scattered across the galaxy. We can extend this star's life by another billion years with minimal intervention. Dr. Yunji had moved beyond simple medical research into something that approached the miraculous. Diseases that had plagued species for millennia were being cured. Genetic damage from radiation exposure was being repaired. Some species that had been considered extinct were being brought back to life. The Deltani homeworld is showing signs of recovery, she reported to the Assembly's Science Committee. Plant life is returning for the first time in 3 centuries. The atmospheric processors are working better than we hoped. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in the way different species saw each other. The old divisions between major and minor powers had disappeared. Strength was no longer measured in military might or economic control, but in the ability to contribute to the common good. Elder Kethvar had lived long enough to see the fulfillment of prophecies that were ancient when his civilization was young. He stood now in the observation deck of the assembly station, looking out at a view that would have been impossible under the old system. Ships from hundreds of worlds moved in perfect coordination, their crews working together on projects that benefited everyone. Construction fleets were building new gates that would connect distant galaxies. Research vessels were mapping regions of space that had never been explored. Medical ships were carrying healing to worlds that had given up hope. President Da-Yun joined him at the observation window. She had aged gracefully during the 10 years of transformation, her hair now silver, but her eyes still bright with the vision that had guided humanity through its greatest challenge. "Your people always knew this would happen?" she asked. Kethvar considered the question carefully. "We knew what humans were capable of," he replied. "We simply did not know if you would choose to be that again." "What do you mean again?" "There." Ancient being gestured toward the stars visible through the transparent aluminum window. "Your species has done this before, in other galaxies, at other times. You are the species that makes things grow. You always were." Da-Yun absorbed this revelation in silence. It explained so much about humanity's rapid adaptation to galactic civilization, their instinctive understanding of technologies they had never seen before, their natural ability to find solutions that others missed. What happened to them? To us, I mean. "The first time, they grew beyond physical existence," Kethvar replied. "Evolved into something that could not be contained by material reality. But they left behind the tools and knowledge for their children to follow the same path when they were ready." "And are we ready?" Before Kethvar could answer, alerts began sounding throughout the station. On the main display screens, images appeared that took everyone's breath away. The ancient gates were opening again, but not to other galaxies. They were opening to other dimensions, other realities where humanity had taken different paths. And through those gates came beings that were recognizably human, but transformed by millions of years of evolution and growth. The message that came through the communication systems was simple, but it carried the weight of cosmic truth. "Welcome to the next level of existence. We have been waiting for you to rebuild what was lost, to prove that you could choose cooperation over conquest, growth over destruction. You have passed the test. Now comes the real adventure." In the great amphitheater, representatives from 1,200 worlds watched in wonder as humanity's ancestors, evolved beyond physical form but still recognizably human in spirit, began to share knowledge that would transform not just the galaxy, but the very nature of existence itself. Their old warnings had been right. Humans couldn't be stopped. But what the ancient records had not fully captured was why they couldn't be stopped. It wasn't because they were unstoppable in any traditional sense. It was because what they truly wanted was for everyone to succeed, for all life to flourish, for the universe itself to become more than it had been before. They were the species that made things grow, and when everything grew together, nothing could stand against the combined power of life choosing to transcend its limitations. Speaker Hyun Woo addressed the assembly one final time before the great transformation began. "We stand at the threshold," Of something unprecedented, he said. Not the victory of one species over others, but the graduation of all species to something greater than any of us could achieve alone. As he spoke, the barriers between dimensions began to thin. Technology that had seemed impossible became routine. Beings that had been separated by vast distances found themselves able to communicate across space and time. The galaxy was becoming something new. Something that had always been possible, but had required the right combination of species, circumstances, and choices to become real. And at the center of it all, humanity continued to do what it had always done best: bringing others together, finding solutions that worked for everyone, and refusing to accept that anyone had to be left behind. The elders had always known that humans couldn't be stopped. Now the galaxy understood why. Because humanity's greatest strength was not their refusal to surrender, but their refusal to let others fail. In the end, that made all the difference.